every crime case can be explained with logic. Some leave a darker trace, one that goes beyond blood and forensic evidence. My name is Bayu. Tonight I want to take you into a story that, honestly, still makes my skin crawl every time I retell it. This story came from a source, someone who doesn't want their identity revealed. They only said, "Please tell this carefully. Don't say my name, don't mention certain details because someone is still watching." At first, I thought this was just another ghost story, an urban legend from an old neighborhood. But the deeper I looked, the more I realized this was a criminal case. One that was once recorded in the police files, but then disappeared, as if someone deliberately erased it from history. The location was a modest house at the end of Mawar Street. From the outside, it looked no different from the other houses. The paint was faded, the iron gate rusty, and the yard now overrun with weeds. No one dares to live there anymore, even though the price has dropped way below market value. Because that house was once home to a small family, the Ardiancia family. In 2007, they moved to Mawar Street, hoping for a fresh start. Ardiancia, the father, was known as a friendly bank employee. His wife, Dina, a housewife. They had 2 children, Reza, 12 years old, and his little sister Intan, just 7. From the outside, their life looked normal, even happy. Neighbors described them as just an ordinary family, but often what looks normal is only a thin mask. Some neighbors said that almost every night they heard commotion from inside the house. Shouting, things breaking, sometimes the sound of a child crying. Strangely, whenever anyone asked how they were, the Ardiancia family always smiled politely, as if nothing was wrong. And that's where the mystery began. One night in 2009, exactly 2 years after they moved in, the entire family vanished, gone without a trace. No one knew where they went, no notes, no signs of moving out. The next morning, the house was still locked tight from the inside. But when the police were called and the door was forced open, the house was empty. Not empty like people had moved out, but empty in a disturbing way. Everything was still there. The clothes, the furniture, the kids' toys, even dirty plates still sitting on the dining table. The only thing missing was the family themselves, as if the earth had swallowed them whole. The first officers to investigate found faint brownish-red stains on the kitchen floor. Tests confirmed it was blood, but only a small amount, not enough to suggest death. So who was hurt, and where did they go? I know this might sound like just another cold case you'd hear on the news, but trust me, what you're about to hear isn't just about a missing family. There's something darker, something the police themselves refuse to talk about. And tonight I'll bring it out of the shadows for you to hear. But there's one warning I need to give you right from the start. If you feel something move behind you while I'm telling this story, don't turn around. Because from the experience of those who've heard this tale before, sometimes the ones who vanished come back, just to make sure their story is never truly forgotten. While digging through old archives, I found a police report that was never widely published. It contained a short timeline of the night the Ardiancia family disappeared. According to the record, neighbors last heard noise around 2:15 a.m. At first, they thought it was just another argument. Doors slamming, dishes breaking, then the children screaming. But at exactly 2:30, everything stopped. Silence. No more crying, no sound from the TV, not even the faint hum of the fan that usually came from the house. It was as if all life inside that home was cut off in a single breath. The next morning, one neighbor, Mrs. Ratna, grew suspicious. Normally, Dina, the mother, was already outside by then, sweeping the yard or feeding stray cats. But that day, nothing. The curtains were shut tight. No sound from inside. Suspicion turned into fear when the second night came and the house was still dark. Mrs. Ratna finally reported it to the neighborhood head, who passed it on to the police. Officers arrived, forced the door open, and found what they described as a disturbing scene. The television was on but silent, showing only gray static. In the dining room, plates were still set out with rice gone stale and side dishes already moldy. Children's toys were scattered across the floor, as if abandoned in a rush. But the strangest thing was in Reza's room, the 12-year-old boy. On his study desk, they found an open notebook. The last words written on the page were, "Don't let him in." The writing looked rushed, the pen breaking mid-sentence. Police searched the house and the area around it. No signs of a break-in, nothing stolen, no doors or windows forced. The only clues were the faint bloodstains in the kitchen, and this part never made it to the news. On the bathroom wall, there was a small handprint. It was at the height of a child, but pitch black, as if burned into the surface. Witnesses around the neighborhood swore they didn't see anyone leave the house that night. No car, no guests, no footsteps. It was as if the house had swallowed them whole from the inside. And that's when the dark rumors began. Some believed the family had been brutally murdered, their bodies hidden in a way no one could ever uncover. But others believed the family never really left. They're still in that house, only not in human form anymore. I still remember the words of my source when they told me this detail. Their voice was trembling but firm. "Bayu, if you ever go inside that house at night, don't you dare call their names. Because they say, if you do, they will answer." After that night, the official investigation lasted only a short while. Police questioned neighbors, brought in a forensic team, did their checks. But strangely, the case file only moved forward for less than 3 months. After that, nothing. No updates, no closure. I tried digging for the records online. Nothing. Even in local media, there were only 1 or 2 short articles about a missing family on Mawar Street with no details. It was as if the case had been buried deep on purpose. When I asked a retired officer who once worked in that area, his face immediately tightened. He only said, "That case is not something to be discussed anymore. There's a reason the files are gone." From the way he said it, I knew there was more to it. This wasn't just a normal crime, there was interference. Something that made even the authorities choose silence. But one small detail slipped through the erasure. My source showed me an old photo, a faded picture secretly taken by a neighbor a few days after the family vanished. It showed the second floor window of the Ardiancia house. From inside, a faint shadow of a child pressed against the glass, face pale, eyes dark. The chilling part was, the child looked like Reza. But if you looked closer, the hand pressed against the glass was wrong, too long, like bones unnaturally stretched. That neighbor, the one who took the photo, reportedly fell ill soon after. Within a few months, he died mysteriously. He was found in his bedroom, body bluish, while his window was wide open, even though it had been pouring rain that night. The story spread quickly among locals, but no one dared to talk about it out loud. Mawar Street turned into a deserted road. Children were forbidden to play near the house. Anyone passing by would quicken their steps, pretending not to notice. And what gave me chills was this. A handwritten note from a young investigator at the time somehow leaked to the public. The note was short, but clear. "This is more than just a disappearance. The house refuses to be abandoned. It's as if something wants to stay inside. I recommend closing the case." Reading that note made my skin crawl, because I realized this case wasn't only about human crime. There was something else, something darker, that might have interfered on the night the family vanished. And I knew. The deeper I dove into this story, the thinner the line became between criminal investigation and the supernatural terror that seemed to be watching me as well. After the Ardiancia family vanished, the house was sealed. But a few years later, the seal was broken. No one knows who did it. But from then on, some locals dared to sneak in, either to test the rumors or just to chase a thrill. From the stories I gathered, most people who went inside came out pale, panicked. Some even fell sick afterward. But one group of young men were braver. They entered during the day, bringing their phones to record, hoping to capture something for content. The footage they got was blurry, but enough to give an idea. In Dina's bedroom, they found a crumpled notebook under the bed. It looked more like a diary, handwritten entries from a woman, presumably Dina's. The first few pages seemed normal, describing daily routines, but toward the end the writing turned chaotic. Scribbles, repeating the same words over and over. He knocked again. That sound from the kitchen night after night. The kids must not open the door. And on the very last page was a sentence that made my throat dry when my source read it aloud to me. If I'm gone, don't let Reza go with him. The sentence ended there. No period, no closure, just rushed handwriting, the ink smudged across the page. Strangely, the diary disappeared afterward. The young man who found it supposedly kept it, but a day after leaving the house, he was in a motorcycle accident. The diary was never seen again. But what troubles me most is this. Did the diary really vanish, or was it hidden by someone who didn't want the world to know its final words? I'm more convinced now. This family left behind signs, but every sign always ends in tragedy for whoever dares to touch it. I managed to track down one of the surviving witnesses. His name is Mr. Dardo, the neighborhood security guard who was on duty that night. Listening to his story felt like being pulled back in time, to the exact night the Ardiancia family vanished. Mr. Dardo said that around 2 a.m., while making his rounds, he noticed the family's house lights were unusually bright. Suddenly, the curtain of the front room shifted, and he saw Dina standing behind the window. Her face was pale, her eyes full of fear. He wanted to approach, but as he stepped closer, something made him freeze. Because from that very same window, another figure appeared. A tall, thin, pitch-black shadow standing right behind Dina. That shadow, it wasn't human, son, he told me, his voice trembling. Too tall, too big in its eyes, and they glowed. When he blinked, the shadow was gone, and the curtain fell shut. He never saw Dina come out, and from that night on, the house went dark. I could see the genuine fear on Mr. Dardo's face as he spoke. Even after decades, he still refuses to walk past that house. There's a reason the police could never close that case, he said. Because what happened can't be explained by human logic. His words kept echoing in my head. If there truly was another shadow behind that window, then this case wasn't just about a missing family. Maybe they never left of their own free will. During my search, I came across rumors of a piece of evidence that was never made public. A CCTV recording from the house directly across the street. The footage was taken on the very night the family disappeared. According to the story, the CCTV caught something strange. At first, everything looked normal. It just showed the Ardiancia house with its lights on. But at exactly 2:17 a.m., the entire screen suddenly shook. The image glitched, and then a black silhouette darted quickly across the front of the house. Seconds later, the second-floor window slowly opened. Something extended out, Not a hand, not a human head, but something more like a long piece of black cloth swaying as if alive. And right after that, the house went completely dark. The recording was reportedly seized by the police, but it never appeared in court. The official reason: poor image quality, unusable as legal evidence. But several officers who had watched it firsthand admitted they couldn't sleep soundly ever again. One of them even resigned not long after, moved out of town and never came back. When I tried to track down a copy of the footage, I found nothing. Only one internal police note remained with a short statement. The recording contains unexplained visual disturbances, recommended for internal archive only, not for public release. I closed that file with trembling hands, because if it's true that a recording exists showing something that night, then this mystery isn't just hearsay, not just neighborhood gossip. It's real. And whatever was inside that house, it erased an entire family as if they never existed. From one of the relatives, I heard that Dina once sent a letter a few days before the family vanished. The letter was addressed to her close friend from high school, who had already moved to Bandung. But here's the strange part: the letter never reached its destination. The envelope was only discovered years later, when the post office was re-archiving old mail. The paper was already worn out, but the handwriting inside was still perfectly clear. I'm scared something is coming back. The nights in this house are never quiet. Reza often wakes up saying he hears knocking at the kitchen door. Sometimes I hear footsteps in the hallway, even though no one's there. I want to leave, but I can't abandon them. The last line of the letter made my skin crawl. If one day I disappear, don't look for me in this world. Just imagine she wrote that only days before they truly vanished without a trace. Even more chilling, the postmark on the envelope showed a clear date, 2 days before the night of the tragedy. Which means Dina already knew something was about to happen. Something she couldn't stop. I sat for a long time staring at that letter in the post office archive. In my mind, one question kept repeating. How could a young girl write such a detailed premonition, as if she had already received an invitation from something that was waiting? One of the old investigators once told me that the strangest part of the family's house was actually the kitchen. When the forensic team first went in, they found footprints on the dust-covered floor. At first, they thought they belonged to the family, but after closer inspection, the prints were far too big, nearly 40 centimeters long, and the shape didn't quite match a human foot. The toes were longer, curling inward almost like claws. The tracks circled around the kitchen door, then stopped right in front of the dining table. Strangely, there were no footprints leading out of the kitchen. It was as if something appeared and then vanished on the spot. What made the case even stranger was the dining table. It was found perfectly set with 4 porcelain plates already filled with food, but according to relatives, the family hadn't planned any dinner that night. The food on the plates was rotten, covered in mold, yet everything was still neatly arranged, as if they had all sat down, ready to eat, and then suddenly disappeared. There was even a rumor among the old investigators that meal wasn't cooked by the family at all. The smell of the spices was different, unfamiliar, almost overwhelming. I still remember the smell, one retired investigator told me when I met him. Like meat that had been cooked for far too long. But it wasn't beef, and it wasn't chicken either. It was sharper, stranger. He refused to explain further, but from the look on his face, I knew he still carried nightmares from that kitchen. In the police records I found, there was something else strange. Every time the Ardiancia family was mentioned, one section was always blacked out. At first I thought it was just a filing error, but after comparing several documents I realized there was one family member's name that was consistently erased. The family was known to have 4 members, Mr. Ardiancia, his wife Rena, their daughter Dina, and the youngest son, Reza. But in the older records, there was another name that should have been there. Yet it was always censored, even in official documents. Some files only left the initials, S.A. Who was S.A.? Could it be they actually had another child no one ever talked about? Or maybe someone who lived with them, but was later erased from history? When I asked one of the retired officials about it, he immediately closed the folder in his hands and said, "Stop here, Bayu. Don't ever ask about that name again. It's not something we should talk about." His response only made me more suspicious. If there was really nothing to hide, then why erase it with thick black ink on nearly every record? And if there really was someone who was forgotten, could that person be the key to why this family vanished without a trace? That night I sat staring at the file full of blacked out lines. It felt like staring into a dark hole, one deliberately created so no one would ever know what was buried behind it. The Ardiancia house had been abandoned for years. Since the tragedy, the building was left to rot. Its walls were peeling, the windows shattered, and the roof leaked in several spots. But to me, that place wasn't just an old house. It was a silent witness. I decided to go there alone that night. Some of the locals warned me not to, saying the house had been locked up by the authorities. But in reality, the rusty gate pushed open easily. Nobody was really guarding it. The moment I stepped inside, the air felt different. Thick, damp, almost like a faint mist that clung to my skin. My flashlight swept across the living room, landing on a broken rattan chair and a dusty family photo still hanging on the wall. In that photo, Dina's face stared straight into the camera with a smile that now felt more like a warning. I walked slowly toward the kitchen. Every creak of the wooden floor beneath my feet sounded louder than my own breathing. On the dining table, the plates were still there, dry, covered in dust, yet perfectly in place, as if time itself had stopped in that room. When I pointed my flashlight at the back door, I felt it, that heavy sensation of being watched. I knew that feeling well. Over the years, I'd grown used to the cold weight pressing against the back of my neck whenever they were near. Then faintly I heard a sound. Not the wind, not rats. It was more like a whisper. A child's voice softly muttering something, repeating it over and over without pause. I crouched down, pressing my ear closer to the wooden floor. The whisper was clearer now. It was coming from beneath the house. There was an empty space under this building, a space that was never marked on any blueprint. I discovered a small door behind the kitchen cabinet. It was too low for an adult to pass through. The paint had peeled off, the handle was rusty, yet the padlock still dangled there. Strangely, it wasn't locked. With a bit of effort, I managed to pull it open. A stench immediately hit me, a mix of damp earth and that metallic scent eerily similar to blood. A short wooden staircase led downward. My flashlight swept across a cramped room with brick walls. The dirt floor was covered in white chalk markings, forming strange symbols I didn't recognize. Overlapping circles, triangles, and shapes resembling wide-open eyes. In the center of the room stood a wooden chair. Around it were 4 burnt-out candles, leaving black stains on the ground. On the chair, ropes were still tied tight, as if someone had once been restrained there. But what truly froze me in place was the back wall. Carved into it in large, jagged letters were the words, "S.A. belongs to them." My hand shook as I brushed the wall, as though some lingering energy pushed back against my presence. Then suddenly my flashlight flickered. For a moment the room went completely dark. And in that darkness I heard it, a child's soft laughter. Not from the past, but from something still there. I scrambled back up the stairs, slamming the wooden door shut behind me. My breath came heavy and fast, but deep down I knew I had just uncovered something that was never meant to be unearthed. A few days after my investigation at that house, a retired police officer contacted me. He said he still kept one piece of evidence that never made it into the official reports: an old cassette tape. It had been found in the living room, hidden behind the sofa. The recording lasted 27 minutes, capturing faint sounds from the Ardiancia family's final night. I played the tape in my room. The audio was noisy, full of static, but slowly I began to make sense of it. At first, it was just normal, casual conversation. A mother's voice, the children laughing and teasing each other. But around the 12-minute mark, everything changed. There was a loud knocking on the back door, 4 times. Then silence. After that, Mr. Ardiancia's voice came through, urgent, telling the kids to get into their rooms. Dina started crying, saying she saw someone standing in the backyard. The next seconds were chaos, scraping noises like furniture being dragged across the floor. A brief scream, probably Rena, the mother. Then came a deep, rumbling voice. It wasn't human. It sounded like it was echoing from inside the walls. "Not you," I called. "Give me SA." I nearly dropped the player when I heard it. The voice was too real, too clear to dismiss as static or distortion. And the worst part? The recording cut off suddenly at minute 27. No click, no stop button. Just silence, as if someone or something decided the tape wasn't allowed to capture more. I sat frozen long after the cassette ended. My mind spun with questions. If there really was someone or something looking for SA, then who exactly was SA? And why would an entire family have to disappear because of that one name? Ever since I heard the name SA on that tape, I couldn't stay calm. The name kept echoing in my head. I tried searching through school records, neighborhood documents, even the village census. Strangely, there wasn't a single entry with the initials SA connected to the Ardiancia family. But the deeper I dug, the stranger it got. In the primary school's enrollment book, there was a page that clearly once held a student's name. Now it was scribbled over with thick black ink, so much that the paper had torn through. I asked one of the older teachers who had taught there at the time. His face went pale. He slammed the book shut and whispered, "Son, there are things better left alone. Trust me, for your own safety." But I didn't stop there. That night I opened the small notebook left by the retired policeman again. Inside I found a faint note, scrawled in rushed handwriting. "Psychiatric third child, unofficial, unregistered, Y erased from records." I closed the notebook, my heart pounding. If there really was a third child in the Ardiancia family, then the tragedy was far darker than anyone imagined. But why would an entire village agree to act as if that child never existed? That night my sleep was restless. Half dreaming, I heard a child's voice whisper right in my ear, "I'm SA, I'm still here." I woke up drenched in cold sweat, and on my desk, written in white chalk I never owned, were the words, "Don't look for me." I finally found someone willing to talk. An old grandmother, once the Ardiancia family's neighbor, frail with age, but her memory of that night was still sharp. We sat on the porch of her modest home. She stared at me for a long moment, as if deciding whether I deserved to know. Then, with a trembling voice, she said, "That night I heard screams. I stepped outside and saw shadows in their yard. But the clearest thing I saw was a child. Not Dina, not the boy. Another child, a little girl. She ran toward the garden, but after that, she was gone, like the earth swallowed her." A chill ran through me. "Was that SA?" I asked softly. The grandmother lowered her head. Her name was Sari Ayu, the third child. But she wasn't their biological daughter. They said she was adopted from a distant relative, and since she was little, there was always something unusual about her. She often talked to empty air, laughed by herself. Sometimes she'd stare at adults with eyes far too sharp for a child. My hands grew cold. It all started to make sense. S.A. wasn't just a name, she was real. And on the night of the tragedy, she might have been the key to everything. Before I could ask more, the grandmother suddenly froze. Her face went stiff, her eyes fixed on something behind me. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there. When I looked back, tears were streaming down her face. Her hands shook as she whispered, "Don't say her name out loud, son, they're still listening." I went home with my head full of questions, but deep down I knew S.A. was still out there in one form or another. My next lead took me to the village cemetery. There I met an old gravedigger. When I asked him about the Ardiancia family, his face tensed up. "I was the one who dug their graves," he said quietly. But that night there was a strange order. The police told me to dig 5 graves, even though everyone knew the official victims were only 4. I froze. 5? He nodded slowly. 1 grave was left empty. They said it was for a body that was never found. I know who they meant. The third child, S.A. My whole body went cold. I asked him to show me where it was. Sure enough, in a hidden corner of the cemetery, there was a small mound of earth. The wooden marker bore no name, just a rough carving. X. I stood there for a long time. The night wind blew, carrying a faint scent of incense. Then, from somewhere in the distance, I heard the sound of small footsteps running between the graves. I spun around, flashlight cutting through the darkness. Nothing. But on the ground near my feet I saw it. Tiny footprints, damp, as if freshly made. A child's footprints. I understood right away. S.A. was never truly buried there. Only her name was. Her body, or maybe her spirit, was still wandering, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover the truth. And unfortunately, that person was me. That night, I opened the old police notes again, trying to piece together all the fragments I'd found. The name S.A. kept appearing, always with a question mark. And the deeper I read, the more my ears filled with whispers. At first, they were faint. "Bayu!" Then louder, like a child calling out. I turned around. Nothing. But the air grew heavy. Suddenly, the lamp on my desk went out. The only light left was from my phone. In that dim glow, I saw a small shadow dart past my bedroom door. I chased after it, but the hallway felt longer than usual. From the far end, a voice spoke clearly. "I didn't die, they lied, they all lied." I froze. Those words made it clear S.A. wasn't just a story. She was real. She was alive. Or at least some part of her still lingered in this world. The small footsteps stopped in front of a mirror, and in its reflection I saw something that turned my blood cold. A little girl, hair messy, wearing a torn dress. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with rage. Before I could move, she pressed her palm against the glass from the other side. And on the mirror's surface, fresh red stains appeared, shaped into just 2 letters, S.A. I collapsed to the floor, trembling. In that moment, I knew this investigation had gone too far. I wasn't just searching for answers anymore. I was being called by something that refused to stay silent. The next day, I went back to the old gravedigger. I pushed him to talk more. After a long silence, he finally admitted in a low voice, "They all knew, son. That child wasn't a victim. She was the cause." That night, the Ardiancia family had a huge fight. There were rumors. The third child wasn't just adopted. She was given to them by someone tied to dark practices. And ever since she came into that house, the terror began. Crying at night, objects moving on their own, animals dying suddenly. I felt my chest tighten. So S.A. wasn't just another victim, she was the key to everything. Did S.A. really kill her family? I asked. The gravedigger shook his head quickly. No, not like that. But that night, she vanished, and her body was never found. That's why there's an empty grave. The police, the officials, they all covered it up. It was safer to say everyone died than to admit there was one child who slipped away. I could barely breathe, slipped away, or maybe let go on purpose. On my way home, my thoughts were a mess. If S.A. really survived that night, where did she go? Who took her? Or is she still out there, no longer human, but something far more terrifying? That same night, I heard knocking at my window, 3 times. When I pulled the curtain, I saw that little face pressed against the glass. The face of a young girl, a faint smile on her lips, and those lips moved, though no sound came out. You're getting closer. I knew I had to close this case, but that night everything reached its peak. I dreamed, or maybe it wasn't a dream. I was back in the same dark hallway, like a doorway into another world. At the end of the hallway there were 2 things. The empty grave marked with an X, and a small child in a torn dress. She stood still, head down. Then slowly, she lifted her face. It was cracked, her eyes glowing red. Bayu, tell them I'm still here. I'm the last one. I'm the one they never buried. Her voice echoed inside my skull, so loud my ears felt like they were bleeding. I wanted to run, but my legs were nailed to the floor. The child came closer, step by step, until I could feel the coldness of her breath. She whispered, "If you stop, I'll follow you. If you keep going, you'll become part of my story." I woke up screaming, my body drenched in sweat, but in my hands there was wet soil. The same soil I saw at the grave. This wasn't just an investigation. This wasn't just another criminal case. This was the story of a child erased, buried in lies, but never truly gone. And I realized I've gone too far. Now S.A. isn't just a ghost from an old story. She's a shadow that follows me, even when I close the book and turn off the light. I am Bayu, the witness who accidentally opened the door. And that door can never be closed again.